Joe Mellon's on there.
What? Let's see who that man is. Look, Mr.
How's it going?
Hi, Jeff. How are you doing?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Hey, did you have any Ritz crackers with peanut butter today?
No Ritz crackers tonight. Ritz crackers and peanut butter, and then trying to talk on one of these, it doesn't go well, you know?
Yeah, my daughter used to eat those, but she doesn't like them anymore. She's tired of them.
Well, I think they're my go-to snack, you know?
Yeah, they're very convenient. And they never go bad. I mean, they can last, what, 100 years?
Well, yeah, right. I'm pretty sure the shelf life, I'm still working on World War II surplus Ritz, so.
I'll be right back. Excuse me.
Oh, yeah, I'll be here.
All afternoon that day, watch.
can't hear you.
Who do you want to hear?
I still have to figure out how this thing works.
Oh, now I can hear you. All good.
I guess an X is not good on my screen.
X's are rarely good.
Yeah.
Is my screen open?
Who?
Who's
Gene,
that? Yep.
No, I just see the G.
I see the big G, yeah.
That's it.
yeah, let me see if this works.
There you go.
All good.
Happy New Year.
Oh,
Happy
Happy
New
New Year,
Year.
Judy. How are you?
Well, thank you. It's good to see everybody.
Good. Is that a Pete Rogers behind you?
Oh, I don't know that for a fact. No, I don't think so. No.
I like it.
Thank you. It's just something we've had for a long time, way before we even lived near the water. So it's
It's
just something.
beautiful. That's the
fun.
kind of thing Pete used to do.
Oh,
I
really?
have, oh yeah. He had beautiful water, ocean stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I love that stuff.
I have Castle Rock that he did. It's so cool. I mean, it's Castle Rock.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey there, Julie.
Hey there, Judy. How are you?
There we go.
Good. Good to see you.
Nice to be seen. Nice to see you
Hi,
all.
Julie. Happy New Year.
I know. Yay. 2021. Moving on.
Yeah.
Everybody is well?
Yes. How are you? And you
Good.
too? And your
Yes.
family? Everybody? All good?
We are good.
Oh, grateful for that.
Yes. Doesn't mean we weren't touched, but we are good now.
Oh, did you have
Oh,
it? Somebody?
I did not. My son and his wife did.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah. And they live on our top floor. So it was
Oh.
quarantine, but
Still very worrisome.
it is. Yep. You do worry. You do worry. Fortunately, their symptoms were on the milder side, so they were fortunate.
It's such a random disease.
It is. My doctor was so shocked I didn't get it because we've been living together since it began, so we're all in our bubble. And the night before, his wife, who had just returned to Finland, she called and said that she tested positive, and we had dinner together.
Hmm.
And I'm like, how I didn't get it, I don't know, but knock on wood, I'm okay with that.
Good.
Thank God. Yeah. I think that's the biggest problem with that disease is the randomness of it all.
Yes.
I so appreciate that we can go up to the church parking lot and get tested.
Yes, thank you to the Preservation Trust for that and
Oh,
their
I
wonderful
so appreciate that.
donors. Yep.
We went down to visit our grandchildren in Rhode Island, and we had to get tested beforehand and fill out forms and file them with both states. And
Yeah.
it was just nice to be able to just go there, get it done.
Wow.
You can't go to any other state now.
No.
No.
Nope.
And
Oh,
it,
Susan.
Hey, hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? How's Colorado?
It's good. It's good. Too dry. We haven't had any snow.
No snow?
Really?
Hmm.
Very little.
Well, you have an awesome representative. You have your Ms. Shooters. You've got your state, you've got your representative in Congress who owns the Shooters restaurant and who refused to walk
Oh,
through the
yeah,
metal
her.
detector because
Not-
she's
not
got
my
her gun.
district. Anyway, I'll be back in Massachusetts on the 23rd.
Well, don't bring her with you.
No, I won't.
23rd. Oh, great. Let's get together for tea.
Do. Yeah, let's do.
Good. That's soon.
Yep.
Hi, Tony.
Hi,
How are you?
Tony?
Hey,
good,
Tony.
good. Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Sorry.
Hi, Tony.
hi, Jean.
I'm late.
Hi, how are you?
Right?
Just waiting for Josh here on the selectmen's,
I'm not that late.
And
looks like the FinCon has a quorum.
yes,
Yes. Ah, so I am town hall tonight. Okay.
yes. I was wondering where you were.
Do you want to be the host or do you want me to maintain it, Bob?
It doesn't matter to me. You can be the,
Hey, Bob.
Durant will be a mismatch for the Celtics. A guy like LeBron will be a mismatch for the Celtics.
So Tony, do we still only have one Colin?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We have calls now. No, this is town meeting. This is good stuff. Northeastern.
I don't know why I'm not able to. Oh, you know what, Bob, you might be the host. So
Yeah.
if you right click, Bob, on the person that's talking, it's Dever JJ. You should be able to, the top right corner, you should be able to click mute.
Yep, I got them.
And
Now, just so I know, if I mute them, can they unmute themselves or do I have to unmute them?
click participants down the bottom in a tab on the right side. It should list all the participants. And then down the bottom of that, there's 3 dots.
Okay.
Down the bottom of that, there's 3 dots. If you click on that, there's a couple of options. So you can check off,
All right.
allow participants to unmute themselves.
Yeah.
know,
Okay. All right.
so-
So for now, people can unmute themselves. If it turns out to be an unruly crowd, though, we may switch.
Got it.
I wouldn't know anything about those unruly crowds, having hosted my first Zoom lecture on Sunday, and we got Zoom bombed with Guns N' Roses.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right in the middle.
Whoa.
I know how to control them now, but I didn't at the moment.
What do you do?
Well, I can remove them.
How do you
I
do
just
that?
dismiss them. You go to their name, you click on their name, and there's more, and you click more, and down there it says remove.
Oh, thank
We,
you for telling. Good, thank you.
That happened to us in one of our first public health public meetings. We had like 40 people on Zoom here for the town.
Mhm.
We were babooned. There was like all of a sudden all pictures of monkeys and
Oh my gosh.
it was, I just closed the meeting and stuff. I panicked and just,
Oh, yeah, I was starting to. I knew there was a way to get rid of them. I just had to find it. And everybody was being so kind in the chat, telling me, you can get rid of them. And I'm like, yep. But, and then the person who Zoom bombed us was not so kind in the chat.
yes, I know.
Well, there were worse bombs than Guns N' Roses.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Yes.
There was no nudity, so we're okay.
Just Guns and Roses.
Just Guns N' Roses, yeah.
All right. Well,
I think we're all set, Tony, to get going. Bob and John, do you want me to let me open the meeting for the Board of Selectmen? I know that Jean's on. I don't see Josh yet. Josh, you here? No, okay, but we have a quorum, so let's see. Hold on a second.
Hey, Mark, you've been expressionless.
Yeah, well, I don't like looking at myself for 2 hours on the screen, so I just kind of put a picture that's 10 years older than myself.
It's a great idea.
Younger than myself up on the screen, so I feel better about myself at the end of the night.
That's a great idea.
yeah.
So we're going to open the meeting for the Board of Selectmen on January 14th. It's 7:05, and presently we have Jean Canty and Mark Cullinan. So we are open for the Board of Selectmen, Bob and John.
And on our side, on the FinCom side, we have, I hope I can catch everybody here. We have Dana, we have Jeff, we have Barbara, we have Judy, we have Julie. There's Bill Brown, and everyone else might be off on the second screen. I think that's it. I don't see John Fulgham.
No, he wasn't sure he'd be able to make it.
He wasn't sure he would be able to make it, but that is certainly a quorum. So the Finance Committee meeting is called to order.
So, Bob, we're crashing your meeting, more or less. So,
No,
why don't you take the lead on this?
all right. Well, Tony asked if we could consider a couple of transfer requests. I think we can do those quite quickly. So may we just do those and get those out of the way?
Yes.
Did we want to have any discussion on that?
Well, let's at least present what they are and how much they are, how much is in the reserve fund now, and how much will remain after these transfer requests, and what other transfer requests do you foresee? That was
Bob, before we get started, and Tony, before we get started on this, I want to introduce Allison. Allison is here for our first meeting, the new town treasurer and financial officer. Tony, you want to introduce her? Allison, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Allison Nieto. I just started with the town last Monday, and I've hit the ground running with Tony. We've already had a number of budget meetings to prepare for the FY22 budget. I'm cross-training with Debbie right now for the month, so she's transferring all of her great knowledge to me that I'm thankful for. And so far, so good. I look forward to working with all of you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And we with you.
Allison's done a great job. She, when I talked to her the other day about the schedule coming up and getting into town meeting, I was like, oh my God, I already feel behind schedule. And she was cool as a cucumber. No problem, she said. So we're in good hands, and she's got a ton of great experience from Marblehead. And, so we're very excited to have Allison, and I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy working with her as well. So this year, as far as reserve fund goes, we typically have anywhere around $160,000, $175,000 in the reserve fund. I think last year we had brought that up to just over $200,000 for additional legal expenses. And then this most recent town meeting, we actually were hoping, we were prepared to present a budget that had, that didn't need all of our free cash to balance itself. But because of COVID and the unknown impacts of, what those expenses were going to be or how our revenues were going to get hit, we took that extra money and we put it into the reserve fund. So the reserve fund this year was at, I think, Allison, jump in, I think it was $340 something thousand. So extremely high compared to past years.
Correct.
And what we are coming to you guys for these transfer requests, the biggest one is our public health. So the town has, we've received or been awarded, we've been awarded about $310,000 through FEMA and through the CARES Act for COVID-related expenses. So that money was due to expire at the end of December. Every community was working under this guidance. On December 23rd, or no, even later, I think it was like 26th or 27th, we got notification from the state that the recently passed CARES Act bill by Congress actually extended that deadline for another year. However, it did not include additional funding. So in the last 2-3 weeks of December, we were operating under the understanding we had to use it or lose it. So we bought, a significant amount of supplies to try to get, stock up as best we can in case we didn't get any more money. And then days before the end of the year, we were told, actually, now you need to take this money you have left and spread it out over an entire year. So, what that looks at is we spent in 9 months, $310,000. So we're averaging about $100,000 a quarter. And looking forward, Allison can talk to you about the call she was on yesterday that talked about potential future funding under the Biden administration and under the new Senate and Congress that may come in the coming months. But we don't have a definitive date of that. So we need to bridge that gap. So we put together a proposal here that gets us through March. We looked at our expenses under COVID for the last 9 months. As I said, we spend about $100,000, and that's about what this reserve fund transfer is for, $104,000. Originally, a lot of the money was for supplies, getting us into remote working, PPE for our fire, for our police, for our employees, things of that nature. In the last few months, or the last 6 months or so, 5 months, it's shifted more towards professional services and salaries. So with the surge, early on, before the summer, and most recently, our health nurse hours have skyrocketed. With the ever-changing reopening phases and how that impacts our businesses, our health inspectors' hours has gone up because he has to make sure that our businesses are adhering to that. And then, of course, testing. Testing is a huge piece for us. When you're dealing with an 80% asymptomatic virus, having free, local, convenient testing is one of the best tools to capture people that may not know that they're carrying the virus. And so they just, hey, it's free, it's right down the street, I'm going to go get a test. They come up positive, we put them in quarantine, we prevent some transmission. So that, however, isn't cheap. We started in mid-November and we spent $40,000 by the end of December. So it is expensive. We had to suspend testing. We were doing 2 days a week and we had to suspend it because of this funding issue. And luckily we were provided a generous donation from the Nahant Preservation Trust that allowed us to open testing back up for 2 hours on Saturday, last Saturday. It will also extend for another 2 Saturdays. And then if we get, if this reserve fund transfer goes through, we have money in here set aside for testing as well. And again, it's to hopefully bridge that gap. We also looked at, what are we averaging on costs of salaries and supply, and we put this through the end of March. So if you look at the spreadsheet I had sent yesterday, you'll see there's about $49,530 in salaries. And that again is spread out amongst all the different town employees that are performing COVID related activities for 13 weeks. COVID supplies, again, we've stocked up pretty well. So we think we can make 10,000 stretch to the end of March. And then purchase services. So that, that has a lot to do with testing, regular cleaning. We have an outside cleaning service that cleans the fire department, the police station, and the town hall, and the vehicles once a week. It comes in with it's like an air sprayer type disinfectant that's actually helped us keep our numbers down. So things like that. And then the other thing I'll just mention is that with the vaccine, right now we have to pay. So in order to provide the vaccine to our first responders in this first round here, we actually, our health nurse, Deb Murphy, actually is working the vaccine facility that we have to pay for those costs. So with her there, we have to bring in a secondary nurse to help with contact tracing back here in town. So it does increase the cost. So, but that, if we don't, if we didn't get this on the agenda tonight, we technically wouldn't be able to pay her at the end of the week. We are at 0 at this point. So I appreciate you adding it to the
Tony.
agenda.
Right, so FinCom, what I heard is this is a transfer request to pay COVID-related expenses to cover January through March. It's based on our experience year to date from whenever this damn thing began until December. And my floor is open. Further discussion?
Yes, Tony, we talked about this a little the other day. How much of that request is going to go to testing?
I put $28,000. Testing is $70 a test. And, our max capacity, like right before Thanksgiving or right before Christmas, when most people were coming to get a test, we were right around 100, 120 tests in that 2-hour span. So it was around $7,000 a day. So, right now we're not averaging as high. We're more like anywhere from, 50 to 75. So that money spreads a little bit further if you're thinking on a per day basis. So if we maxed out, that should buy us 4 more Saturdays. If we don't, it could extend more than that.
Well, that's the reason I ask it. Are we asking for, or are we requesting enough of a transfer amount to get us through until we get some of that CARES Act money?
So again, we don't have a definitive date as to when we'll see more funds. But we're hoping that we will be able to stretch this money as far as we can. And if we can't, and we haven't seen more money, and it's something we want to continue to do and need more, we can, come back to the finance committee for more.
The worst case, come March, we may find another one of these.
Yeah. And Allison may, would you like to hear a little bit about the information she got about additional funding in the pipeline?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
please.
I would.
Okay. So I was on a call yesterday, and they talked about, they're calling the supplemental CARES Act 2.0. And some of the funding that they mentioned may come through, and it's just uncertain as to how it's going to reach us at the local level. But they said it did include $4.5 billion for vaccine planning and distribution. Those funds are being transferred from the CDC to state public health departments, and then will likely trickle down to local health departments. Those funds must be spent by September 2024. So I do think that we'll likely receive some sort of funding for that. Again, we don't know what the amount will be exactly for Nahant yet. They also spoke about $22 billion for contact tracing and testing. Those funds are supposed to be transferred from the federal government to state public health departments as well. And the idea is that they will filter down to local health departments. Those funds are supposed to be spent by September 2022. And again, we don't know exactly the amount that's meant for each town, but it sounds like we shall be the recipient of some of those funds as well. And then they had 2 other types of funding. They talked about $14 billion for transit infrastructure grants. And then they talked about $1 billion for tribal broadband connectivity programs that would be transferred to tribal governments and tribal state colleges and universities. So it does sound like, you know, the CARES Act 2.0 will come with some money. We're just uncertain as to, you know, how that's going to trickle down to local government and what that amount might mean for us.
Did I
Thank you,
hear
Allison. So,
correctly? Oops.
oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. I just a quick question I was going to ask Tony. Have we done any preparation for being able to deliver the vaccine within Nahant?
So unfortunately, we don't have a ton of control on that other than our, partnership with Lynn. We know that we are, Lynn is committed to us and our partnership with them in that the next phase, we will be, participating in that. But it's really the distribution of the vaccine is about 10 times behind schedule. And that's a state, that's something we don't control. So as soon as, I think just yesterday, the governor came out and talked about phase 2. So we're in phase 1 with which is first responders and healthcare officials. It's it's at phase 1, it takes 2 shots. So in about 2 or 3 weeks, those who got their first dose will come back and get their second. And then phase 2, the governor just announced yesterday, not so much like how soon it's going to be coming out, but talked about who's going to be getting it and, their goals. But as soon as we have that information, we'll be presenting it out to the public. We will have to go to Lynn to get it, and we will staff it.
Hey, Allison, did I hear dates of 2022 and 2024?
Correct. Yes. So
That's a
that's
big
what.
receivable.
Yes. Yeah.
We're on our own for a while.
Took a long time.
That's what it sounds like. And it's very uncertain, obviously, with, the presidential inauguration occurring next week and the new president coming in. So yeah, they did give those 2 dates, which are part of the bill. And so, yes, I don't know the timing of the funding.
What?
And
Yeah, I was gonna say,
yeah, go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
I was trying to make funny. If I'm still around, maybe I'll see the money come in. I don't know.
Well, if we're still around when this money comes in, what happened? It just flows through the general fund, back through the general fund?
No, we actually have a deficit spending account that we had to go to. We had to go to the DLS for authority based on what we were awarded. So we just charge it we deficit spend on it, and then we submit, kind of like with FEMA projects for reimbursement.
Okay.
Did we carry until 2024?
What was that?
Will we carry that? We submit the bill for reimbursement, but if it's 2022 or 2024, that's between 24 months and 48 months before we get the cash. So short-term borrowing on the interim, or if we've got free cash, that it comes out of our free cash.
So we would likely need to wait guidance from the state. These funds would flow through the state and through ANF. And I know with this year's CARES Act funding, some of the funding came in the end of FY20 in June, and some came in, as of now. So they were allowing deficits to roll over into the new fiscal year. That might be the same in this case.
Is there any thought about these loans being forgivable?
Well, it's not really a loan. So CARES Act, there's 2 different funds, sources of fund. The CARES Act money is 100% reimbursable. FEMA is 75%. So, we spend the CARES Act money is a little bit more broad as to eligible expense. So we're trying to spend, under that account as much as possible first before we start spending under the FEMA award. So I don't know. I think it's not really a loan. It's Allison, you might have to speak a little bit more about the actual, functionality of how we're able to pay for it in a deficit spending type of way to answer
Yeah,
that.
my concern is liquidity. I mean, at 104,000 a quarter, that's a lot of cash out and no cash in.
No, so Allison, we talked about this the other day about, in Marblehead, you had put in a bunch up front. We had put in like 60 something grand in already for the town of Nahant. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I believe through the first the first round of CARES Act funding for Nahant, the total available is 300,000, correct, Tony?
It was like 310. Yeah.
And so what the town had done prior to, to me getting there was they'd spend, they spent a bunch and then submitted for reimbursement, and then that reimbursement came through. So when I came from Marblehead, and in Marblehead, we requested our whole allocation up front. And so we actually received our whole allotment and started spending down from that. So we did it a little bit differently. I think the same opportunity will be available through the second round of funding. And I do think that the town will have to be somewhat frugal until we know the exact amount that's going to be coming from the state. So that's why this reserve fund transfer request is before you. We do know that money is available in the general fund and can be spent, and we're hoping that it'll be 100% reimbursed once we know our CARES Act funding allotment.
So Allison, this is Mark, Tony and Allison, I believe this would be considered a RAND, a revenue anticipation note, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
You could do it in that way, correct?
Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a comment or a question actually, to Tony or to Allison. And is the state has a number of sites over in Lynn for testing. Have we been able to contact our representatives in the government, the state government, about maybe getting a site over here in Nahant as part of that? So free testing over there. And could we play?
Lynn's in a much more critical situation than we are. They've been a red community since they started categorizing them by colors. So I'm not 100% sure if they're using their CARES Act or if they have a separate type of agreement with the state for testing there or the federal government directly. But we have been advocating to our state reps and senator, and as well as, to the federal government regionally about the need for more funds for testing.
If I heard correctly, we do have a testing facility, but it's only open Saturdays.
So that's a contract that we worked out with Cataldo directly, but we pay for that. We've been paying for that with our CARES Act money until most recently with the donation from NPT.
And we owe a huge thank you to NPT for that, by the way.
Yeah, it's extremely generous. Again, it's tough because the dollars. You run through those dollars so fast with testing, but it's so important. So we have to be at the same time, when we were getting to the bottom of our amount of CARES Act, our contact tracing is the most important. Deb Murphy and the work that she's doing is at the highest importance, because that allows us to put people in quarantine when they need to be. And of course, our health inspector too, and testing is right there with it. You spend through it quickly, but it's so important. Like I said, if even if it only costs $20. Or if you had to go across the causeway, if you have no symptoms and no real need to get a test, you might not do it. But if it's free and it's right in town and it's, midday on a weekend, you're capturing so many more people that way. It's really important. So
There's no food here, honey. No food. No.
Hey, Bob, to answer your question, we had ample funding. When we had ample funding, we were doing testing 2 days a week.
yeah, that was $14,000 a week, so trying to stretch it out here by doing it on Saturdays.
So I guess I'm gonna come back to the question, but so what of our state reps are we able to get into the state program and, sort of get some more funds at the testing? for
Well,
now?
what Allison was just saying was there's more money coming. It sounds like there's more money coming, but specifically for testing and vaccine distribution. We just don't have a date yet.
Dana, let me just say that I use the Beacon Commonwealth testing program. I've used it probably 4 or 5 times, either in Revere or Lynn now on Blossom Street. And I went on, I think on like a Monday, I was scheduled to be tested on Tuesday at 9 a.m. and there was no wait. So I encourage people to, if they don't want to wait in line in the Nahant, go onto the Beacon Commonwealth program website and sign up. It's pretty efficient.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Mark. I've gotten tested over there 3 times and not
Yeah.
had to wait long at all, except for
Yeah.
one time around Thanksgiving when, it was full. But yeah, it's available to us. So
All right. So FinCom, somebody want to make a motion here?
Yeah, so moved. I make a motion to accept the transfer as requested.
Okay, and that was
I'll
Judy
second that.
Judy, yeah.
and Barbara seconds.
Oh, okay.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, can we-
Bob, I think you have to do a roll call.
Yeah, I was just going to say, can we do names and vote?
DeWitt Brown, aye.
Jeff Lewis, aye.
Julie Tarmy, aye.
Judy Zahora, aye.
Dana
Barbara,
Sheehan,
you were on
aye.
mute.
Barbara Sweeney, aye.
I saw Barbara say aye.
I did.
Right.
Aye.
Barbara Sweeney, but Barbara Beatty, you were on mute.
Okay, aye, sorry. Barbara Beatty, aye.
I think Dana was an aye.
Yep.
And Vanderslice is an aye.
That's
That makes
great.
it unanimous.
Great, thank you. So starting at $340,445 with the approval of that $104,380 reserve fund, you're now at a $236,065 balance. We have the other two. Do you want to go through those pretty quickly? Okay, so the next one is with the overlap of Allison and Debbie at this, working at the same time for training. We need some more funds in our accounting salary, our accountant salary account to $23,900.
I'm sorry, Jeff, was that so moved or?
So that's over and above what's already in there.
Yes,
It's
due
already
to
part of the
the
budget.
overlap.
And you mentioned some of that was accrued vacation.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, it doesn't, I don't have the detail, or does it matter?
Do you have the detail, Allison, on how much of this 23.9 is salary overlap and how much of it is vacation?
Don't have it right in front of me, but let's see if I can pull it up quick.
Which schedule is it that in your email, Tony?
So there is no additional schedule for it.
Let's just say, uh,
Yeah, we only broke out the COVID ones.
In the email, Tony, there's 5 schedules. Which one are we referring to, or is it not there?
It's not there. You have one Word document that is a reserve fund request form for this, but it doesn't break down, it doesn't answer the question that Jeff's asking.
Okay, so,
So
is
whatever it
this-
is,
yeah, is this one
Yeah.
pressing? Can we push this to next week if we don't want to take action without the backup?
About the what?
Backup, sorry, without the detail.
I have it right here. Sorry. So the payout for Deb's retirement for her vacation time, that accounts for $15,896. And then the rest is for 4 weeks of overlap. So it's 4 weeks of her salary and my salary.
No, it ought to be one or the other, not both.
yeah, just
Correct,
one.
sorry. So it would be for mine, I guess. So 4 weeks is, sorry.
16 out of 24. That was just an FYI question on my part.
Okay.
Well, I think you look at me sometimes, should I make a motion? I have no idea how to make a motion. Do I need a stick or something?
No,
to
no, no,
say-
you
Just
simply say, probably the easiest is to just say so moved, which is shorthand for I
So moved.
accepting the motion and I'm moving it.
So I second it. This is Judy.
Okay, moved and seconded, roll call vote.
Barbara Beatty, aye.
Brown, aye.
Jeff Lewis, aye?
Julie Tarmy, aye.
Dana
Dana Sheehan, aye.
and Vanderslice, aye.
Judy Zahora, aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judy, you've disappeared off the screen and I forgot about you.
Mm.
Okay.
All right, so that one's unanimous as well.
Okay, so now you are at a $212,165,000 balance. And the last reserve fund is the cost of the RKG study, the financial
God, that's-
impact. And it's 12,500. So if approved, your final balance will be $199,665, which is, pretty good shape for 6 months, halfway through the year.
I remember my time, Tony, the FinCom only had 75,000 all year.
Yeah, I remember the good old days.
I'm,
The dollar went so much further then.
trust me, I was so happy to report that we didn't need to use all of our free cash to balance the budget, but this was the best thing to do. So we had this flexibility mid-year in case we needed it due to revenue shortages or costs. So I'm glad we did it.
Good move, yeah.
It worked out.
Both you and the FinCom, good move.
Okay, FinCom, further questions on that one? And
I'll
Anyone?
move to approve this.
I have a
I'll
question.
second.
I don't understand the amount. How much was the total for with the RKG?
The cost of the consultant was 12,500.
That was the total, or is this in addition to?
This is the total cost for
Oh.
the RKG report, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it was they came in with an estimate and then this went over and above.
This is we actually haven't actually physically received the final invoice yet, but I had a conversation with them and they said it was 12/5.
Was it, Tony, how many hours was involved with the creation of that report from RKG?
I don't know, Dana.
Is it on the invoice?
We don't have the invoice yet.
Okay.
Tony, do we have the report?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it went out in email and it's on the website.
Yeah, it's 8 pages.
Yeah, it looks like a combination of what Bob did and what Mark did.
Wait a minute, is that first one we got last?
Yeah, that's the report.
That's it?
Yeah, it's 8 pages.
That's the one that the work that the Bob did?
No,
I mean, no, I know, but I know that, but it came from them, but it didn't, I guess I expected after, I guess I thought that was a preliminary, we would get something that actually was of value, more value. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not what I anticipated for what we paid for. All right, it is what it is.
I don't know. I wasn't there with them, every step of the way. I don't know how many hours they worked on it. I don't know,
I think we have a right to ask that. We're
Well,
paying the bill.
I don't know how many hours specifically they spent, but I know I've been anticipating this for the last 5 or 6 months, and every selectmen's meeting, I've been asking for a status update on it. I know I spent several hours on the phone with the consultant, asking questions. I know the consultant has been in town, meeting with department heads, etc., talking to them about the impact on various departments, police, fire, DPW, general services, those types of things. So I don't know the exact number of consulting hours, but I know they've been working on it for a long time, longer than I'd wished.
Amen.
Mark, does it help you achieve what you wanted?
Well, I think what it does is, if you've had a chance to take a look at the report, I think it reaffirms the report that the Board of Selectmen, and I know that Bob Vanderslice had worked on. The big difference between the two reports was that RKJ.
Mark, I don't want to cut you off on this, but we have an agenda item to discuss this.
Okay, fine. All right,
and,
good enough.
And
Yep.
Really what we're talking about now is, do we want to pay this, authorize this reserve? And I apologize for, jumping in. I think
that's fine.
We will have this conversation, but not just yet.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Understood.
FinCom, a motion here, and the motion might be to wait until we see the invoice or ask for an accounting of hours as well.
I make a motion that we wait to see the invoice and have an accounting of hours.
Second that.
All in favor? Or sorry, roll call vote, I guess is a better way to say it.
Katie, aye.
Brown, aye.
Lewis, aye.
Charmy, aye.
Dana, aye.
Vanderslice, aye.
Zahora, aye.
Okay, and that's it for.
Who seconded that, please?
I had seconded it.
Okay, thank you.
Judy moved it and Barbara seconded it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you have the reserve funds that were approved in your email, if you want to print them, or we have them printed at the town hall and stop by to sign them at some point next week, Bob or John.
All right, but you need a physical piece of paper with a real honest to God signature. We can't do this electronically.
You don't have any.
If you have the ability to print and scan, I'll take it.
Okay.
So Tony, part of the emergency money, couldn't that have been used to do upgrades like have DocuSign, have a second web link? Couldn't that money have gone to some of that as well?
We actually were just talking, DocuSign really hasn't been like a major need for us recently, until recently. But, Zoom, certainly we've, probably spent about $1,000 on Zoom. And we've, spent some funds on other things that allow us to, improve our ability to, communicate publicly, continue to do the business of the different committees, the ability to broadcast it on cable TV and things of that nature. We have the one Zoom account. Quite frankly, it hasn't been, the activity of committees hasn't been that high that it was necessary to have two. But it's something that there's money in here for purchase services. We could purchase a secondary one, now that we're heading into a busier season.
That's what I was thinking too. We're going to start to we're in budget season now. And our goal was always that we would do that much sooner than, 2 minutes before the town meeting. So, and we do it in an orderly basis so we have time to process, ask the questions, all of that. And it does seem to me that one is not going to be sufficient.
Yeah, and would be before we move on to the next topic, I guess I would second what Judy's been saying. I run into it when we try to schedule FinCom meetings, probably 50% of the time. And when there is a conflict, I've been using my personal WebEx account, and it just somehow it doesn't always feel right to me to do that, but it gets the job done anyway. So.
We have, we'll definitely reach out to Zoom or order it online, or they are it shouldn't be a problem. They're not the easiest company to deal with, to be honest, and they are in high demand, but sure. I don't think it should be that big of a deal for us to get a second account so that 2 meetings can occur on the same night.
It's probably just a change in your account type or status or something rather than a second account. You're gonna have to go from the silver to the gold or something. Anyway, all right. So
I'd be embarrassed to tell you how many hours I was on the phone just trying to increase the amount of participants that can be on our current account.
Oh, okay. In other words, it may be easier to just open a second account.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right. So our next topic was planning for town meeting.
Okay, so that you have a Word document that says FY22 budget preparation schedule in your emails. So, working backwards from town meeting date, Saturday, May 15th, it will be annual town meeting. We do have quite the amount of articles that may take longer than, the meeting may take longer than usual. So I do have in here a potential for day 2, which would be Monday, May 17th. And then I have rain options for the following weekend.
And the rain options, Tony, because we still expect it to be outdoors.
Yeah, so, with the amount of people that we're expecting to attend based on the, the questions that are the articles on the warrant, regardless of COVID, we're going to be outside. Question is, for me, is whether we have to keep everybody 6 feet apart, and whether or not we'll be in a tent or not. By the way, you asked me about potential future reserve fund transfers. That may be one. That may be one of them. So Saturday, May 15th means the Advisory and Finance Committee recommendation book needs to be on the doorsteps of every household with a registered voter by Friday, May 7th. And it also means that the warrant, the final warrant, needs to be posted by Friday, April 30th. For a delivery date of May 7th, looking at Sterling's previous, interaction with the printer in the past, that means it usually needs to get in the mail a week prior to that, and then they usually like 2 weeks to finalize the margins and the final report and get it printed. So it looks like a Friday, April 30th. Friday, April 9th would be the deadline for the Finance Committee to get their final book, their final draft to the printer. Which means, in the past, we've always tried to do even more than 8 weeks or 2 months for the FinCom, but 8 weeks gets us to February 4th. So in, just a short 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks from now, we should be sending you guys a final or as close to final warrant and budget. And then, of course, per our town bylaws, January 31st, which is a Sunday this year, is the final day for citizen petitions and any committee deadline for warrant articles to be submitted. So we meet the first Thursday of February, the 4th. So on that meeting, we will close and approve the warrant as well as the budget and send that over to you. Of course, like as you guys know, there's potential for changes between February 4th and April 9th. But the bulk of that should be to you in the next couple weeks. The CPC committee met you last night. I need to book some time with Lynn Spencer, the chairwoman, to get a better understanding of their schedule, or let them have a better understanding of this schedule. On the plus side, all the work that they did last year will be transferred into this year's warrant. I don't know if they plan to, accept new grant applications or what. So I got to talk to them, find out what their schedule looks like as well. Any questions about this schedule?
Geez, Tony, thank you very much. It's really, really helpful to have this in front of us now. So although this makes, my hands sweat, and all of a sudden we're, friggin' in the middle of spring, and it's really, really good to have right now. Thank you.
I
There's
know.
no way you can find another month to squeeze in there.
Wow, yeah, we just gone through the entire, and I will send a note out to the Coast Guard Committee, which is not its formal name, and ask them what they want to do. What's the plan going forward? Because we really need to get that settled up. Time is just running out on that.
Thank you, Judy.
Feels like just yesterday we were down Flash Road.
This is like deja vu all over again.
Yeah, Groundhog Day. Whew. But this is great. I think this is the first time I've ever seen a schedule up front. Maybe it's not, but it's the first time I remember. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's we want to, every year we talk about getting it to you guys sooner and sooner.
Yes.
And I wish,
Tony, I know this is awesome as it stands. When will you be comfortable enough with the budget that you could give us like an early draft? okay, it might move a little bit here and there, but the basic structure is there. Is that still February 4th or could that be earlier?
February 4th, to be honest, we still have a few more department head meetings to have. And then of course I need to, brief the Board of Selectmen on it and get their approval before I can send it to you. So realistically, if we can get it to you before February 4th, we will try. But that's going to be here before we know it.
Okay. All right. So questions on the schedule before we go on? No? All right. So I kind of the next topic in my head is like content of this meeting. So my understanding is that this town meeting is everything that got postponed from the last town meeting, unless time and circumstances have made it moot, plus potentially new issues as well.
That's correct. That's correct. Yep.
Okay. So we're still
maybe,
go ahead.
Maybe, on borrowing articles, you might see some change there, with utilization of free cash instead of borrowing of some sort here and there, or new capital needs that have come up since September, urgent ones. So there's that. But for the bulk of the warrant articles, it's what we saw, just before we slimmed down the warrant.
Okay.
And the citizen petitions that were there will now be actually Board of Selectmen articles. That was how we had to do it because of them being citizen petitions originally. So they'll be actually sponsored by the selectmen. Yeah.
All right. And what do we think are the big rocks in there?
Well, certainly Coast Guard Committee, Coast Guard Housing article, the Northeastern Eminent Domain. Like I said, I don't know if anything's changed as far as the CPC grant that's related to that, but obviously, those three pieces are going to be, we can expect a lot of debate on those issues.
And that will drive attendance as well.
Right. Like I said, it would be ideal if we didn't have to be 6 feet apart from each other. And then I could get a few tents and have everybody covered from the sun. But if we can't do that, then it's going to be impossible, or, it would just be far too expensive. So we'd be sitting out in an open field, spread out like the original plan.
Yeah, I can't help but saying, as usual, town meeting will be intense.
Yes. Yes. So I've already spoken with, a couple of the vendors that we used at the last town meeting. Unfortunately for them, their schedules are wide open right now because of everything that's going on with COVID. So we're starting to pencil them in and work out those logistics.
Okay. But there's no possibility of it being at town hall.
I don't think so. Our max capacity is like 416, and that's packed to the brim.
And that's cheek by jowl in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The good thing, Mr. Chairman, is that we have a plan in place. We have a plan that has been reviewed by all of the town committees. We didn't actually execute it to its fullest last year, but we have a plan in place that we can execute, I think, this year if needed.
Okay, FinCom, or selectmen, more questions or discussions on that?
Michael.
All right.
All right.
Hopefully we can, repeat the success of September's town meeting. And, keep it nice and safe, keep everybody safe. And hopefully it's a beautiful spring day.
Okay, thank you.
Implore Tony to get and Allison to get the budget to FinCom as soon as feasible. Thank you.
All right. And then, let's see, on our side, I'm kind of thinking out loud right now. Is everyone clear on their department or committee or issue assignments?
No. Were
No.
we issued assignments? I don't recall.
Well,
We didn't do that yet.
we kind of carried over from last year, but all right, so I'll take that as homework for next meeting.
Thank
And
you.
I think I want to sit with John on that as well, so
Okay.
maybe dependent on his health.
I might also suggest, looking at the calendar between February 4th and April 9th and start, maybe blocking off those days so we can, get them into the calendar and even, even if they're, at least like the Zoom's reserved and the, but also if you, I can talk to my department heads as well if, given that it's Zoom, if you wanted to, meet with, like a 3-hour span on a Saturday or something in the morning. If it's by Zoom, I'm sure my department heads could accommodate that. Or, I don't know, Zoom may open up a little bit more flexibility with getting those meetings done versus, in years past, having to be in the town hall.
Yeah.
So maybe think about that and get that booked out ahead of time.
Yeah, and as we're coming into the season, do any of the FinCom members have a strong preference or a strong dislike for any particular day?
No.
Surprisingly, I'm free.
Yeah, exactly.
Just saying.
And weekends are not quite as meaningful as they used to be.
Not like they used to be.
I like to
When are
stay
weekends?
for
Would someone
Wednesdays.
tell me? When are weekends? I don't even know what they are.
Right, agreed.
Tony, I'd like to re-extend that offer on the water and sewer. If you need a strong back and a weak mind and Allison needs a little help, I'll extend myself. I don't know what I can bring to the party, but I've done a ton of reading, and I know that there'll be a lot of work, to get that thing, if it's something we're still considering moving forward with. Right now, I'm sure that Allison is feeling like she has a fire hose in her throat, and somebody's opened up the tap full, so she's taking a lot in. But when she can catch her breath, if she needs help, then I'll do what I can. It's an open offer.
I think,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
why don't we plan a Zoom session of some sort, Jeff, with Allison, you and I, and we can catch her up on last year's conversations about that and go from there.
It's fine, great by me.
Okay.
Not sure what I think I sent you my email address, so you get that. And, so you can reach me via that if that's the quickest way. I think you got my phone number. I
All
hope.
right. No, we have it. We'll go by email and tomorrow or the next day or next week, we'll reach out to you and schedule something.
Yeah, I think I've got some answers for your question too, regarding why numbers didn't look right. So maybe we can cover that during the same meeting.
It's another idea, as well as in the past, the FinCom has had, we've talked about liaisons with department heads. So if you guys wanted to divide and conquer, and, if you are working from home or have daytime availability, I'm sure my department heads would, meet with, one or, non-quorum, one or two of you guys by Zoom, if you wanted to do it that way to speed up the process. Just a thought.
Yep, that's what we're going to try to do.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion about town meeting schedule and prep? All right, moving on. RKG, the RKG report. Mark and Selectmen, or I guess Mark in particular, I think I'd like to start just by reviewing what I put together, because I think that may put a little bit of structure to the rest of the conversation. Does that make sense to you, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely, Chairman. Go ahead.
Okay, here we go. I am going to share my screen. And when everybody see this, it should look like a white sheet of paper that says introduction at the top.
Yep.
Yes? Thumbs up? Okay. Nobody said no, so I'm going to push on. So what I did was I tried to compare the RKG report, which is actually, I mean, it's not quite what I expected in terms of its format, but it's pretty close. But I tried to compare that to the estimate that we put together, which I'm calling the Nahant estimate. And this is a 3-page document, and Julie, I can send it along and we can include it in the minutes if you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I put this introduction page in here just because these things tend to have a life of their own. I don't think we need to really talk about that page. I am pushing page down and it's not page downing on me. There we go. All right, so, executive summary. These were my takeaways from reading this. And actually putting some study to it. The RKG estimates are larger than the Nahant estimates at both the low and the high end of the range. So they did it. They did an estimate, and kind of like we did, they gave a low and a high. The next two bullets there are the drivers behind the difference, and those are the two big differences. RKG did not include that $6 million incentive payment, whereas in the Nahant estimate, we assume, in the Nahant low estimate, sorry, we assumed that the town would receive that $6 million. So that's probably the biggest chunk of the difference in the low estimate. The second big difference, which affects the high estimate, not the low estimate really, is that RKG calculated their high and low differently. They calculated the high and low based on headcount or population at the Northeastern facility. Whereas what we did was we just took a percentage range around a base estimate. So we took, I think it was -15 as our low, -15% from our base, and +10% as our high. RKG did it as a low population, which was Northeastern's claimed, and a high estimate of population, which is their calculation based on typical occupancy rates for similar kinds of facilities. And then the one that jumped out at me was in their closing paragraph, they cautioned us that the fiscal impact of this could actually be greater because of Dover, they can do virtually anything they want up there. And in their words, it's likely that that will happen, and it's likely that the costs therefore would increase from what we are seeing here, just as an estimate based on this project as it exists right now. So far, so good? Okay, if you like detail, here we go. So let me explain what you're looking at and what I did here. In this case, the columns are divided into two blocks. So you can see on the left, there's a low, which represents the low end of the estimate, the low range of the estimates, and then the block on the right is the high range of the estimates. And then within each block is the Nahant estimate. That's the one that we produced and we talked about, and really was the impetus for the RKG study here. And then the next column over is the RKG calculation of the line item, and then obviously the dollar difference and the percentage difference. So that's done for both the low and the high. That makes sense? All right, I'm taking no comments or no questions. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Give me just give us like 2 minutes in between just to process, okay?
Okay, I'll be quiet.
No, just 2 minutes, a minute.
Bob, you might, one of the big differences is permit fees there, so you might want to explain that.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk through some of these details that are down below. A minute is an awful long time when you're waiting and trying to be quiet.
I know. Well, good. Okay, thanks. I just need a minute to get to look at it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So some of the details. Both RKG and us use the same basic estimating approach, which is to calculate a per capita cost and then apply that per capita cost to the population that would be at that Northeastern facility. So it's the same basic idea. Calculate the per capita cost of expenses that, Northeastern is contributing towards. The big one that you would take out is the school cost, because they don't really.
Let me just add to that, the per capita cost analysis is really the same that most communities use when they're determining their pilot studies. Boston, Cambridge, all of the other communities that have large educational institutions, when they're trying to figure out what their payment in lieu of taxes are going to be, typically they use a per capita cost analysis.
Yeah, this is a very common and well-respected estimating methodology.
So is there any consideration to other approaches rather than the per capita cost?
They are the ones that suggested using per capita cost. I was on a call with them very early in this process where I walked them through our estimate, just so that they would have some background. And that was really my only interaction with them. And at the time, they were talking about doing per capita, but trying to do it only for commercial property. And I think they realized, or they concluded, that there's such a small amount of commercial property in Nahant that it would be basically meaningless to do that. So they went with this per capita, this common per capita kind of a methodology.
Is the public allowed to ask questions at this point, or?
Can we wait till the end and then we'll throw it open?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Let's see. As I mentioned earlier, and I'm looking at on item B there, they used a different approach for calculating low high. We did a range around a base estimate, and they took population. So they used as their low 114, which is what NU has been claiming in their filings. Up to their high is 205, which is they calculate based on typical square foot occupancy of that kind of a facility. So, you know, if you look up at the top now and kind of run your finger across the operating expense row, you can see we're really actually surprisingly close at the low end of the range. But that kind of makes sense because we're both using the same population of 114 there. And at the high end of the range, they are significantly higher because they're basing it on that typical square foot occupancy rate, not the lower 114 claimed range.
Bob, can I just add in terms of operating expenses that the RKG excluded education?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, as did we. All right. Next line item and comment C down below. RKG, they did not estimate capital costs. They didn't say there wouldn't be any capital costs. In fact, they said that, you know, there will be capital costs, but they don't have the engineering capability to estimate what those might cost. You know, and to their point, we don't have engineering studies either to back that up. So, you know, what we have is we have department heads and engineers who are familiar with typical kinds of projects, and that's what our estimates were based on. They're not based on detailed engineering studies. So they didn't estimate capital expenses at all. They didn't really try. So when you see both the chart on the previous page and the total column, the total row here on this page, it is excluding capital so that we can try to keep it apples to apples as best we can.
So by capital cost, Bob, you mean things like wear and tear on the roads over 40 years or increased capacity that needs to be built into the sewer system, that kind of thing that they did not include in theirs?
Yeah,
and their estimate.
I want to be clear. One of the capital items was to repave Nahant Road, and in our estimate, it is only to repave Nahant Road once post-construction. It is not trying to estimate an ongoing acceleration of repaving. So everybody, including Northeastern, seems to agree that Nahant Road will need to be repaved after the construction and after all the heavy vehicles are done rolling back and forth on it. So the Nahant estimate is only one repaving of Nahant Road post-construction, the kind of out-of-cycle repaving of it, if you will.
Yep. But that's not included, that and any other capital costs are not included in the RKG assessment, although they acknowledge they exist, correct?
Yes, correct.
One other thing too, Bob, on the Northeastern University's environmental impact review, in their findings, their summary report, the Northeastern has committed to fortifying Nahant Road and you know, repairing it. So I don't see that those costs are that idea is included there in these reports.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. That would have been in that incentive payment of $6 million. I and RKG have not seen anything that puts that in writing, and maybe, you know, Tony or the selectmen are closer to that than we are.
No, I think that was in the $6 million estimate.
Yeah, it's a separate item. It's not part of the 6 million.
I haven't seen that, Dana.
Yeah, check the Northeastern's environmental impact review.
Okay. Did they put a number on that?
I don't have it in the front of my mind, Mark, sorry.
All right.
Hey, Bob, just getting back to the repaving of Nahant Road, they're showing $500,000 to repave, but then they are showing 800,000 for repair work to 40 steps. Is
Yeah,
that the
there-
revetment?
that's the revetment. So there's two separate things. The repaving of Nahant Road would be post-construction. And my memory says that it was 500,000.
Yes.
And then the other is revetment. So that is reinforcing the hill as you go by 40 steps so that it doesn't fall into the ocean carrying construction vehicles with
Right.
it. And that's 800-ish, something like that.
800.
Yeah, and that number came as Mark helped me out, or Tony helped me out, but there are two different approaches to that revetment. There's one that is more expensive but more permanent, and then there's a second that's less permanent and less expensive, and we just took the middle ground on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, also, the more permanent one is a steep hurdle with permitting. DEP, prefers and pushes that their regs require a soft revetment, a soft bank there. So, which pushed us in the direction of a cheaper solution one-time cost, but obviously something that's going to need consistent renourishment. Or, annual, but, maybe every couple of years renourishment, obviously more than a hard structure.
For sure.
Yeah, I think, Bob, focusing on, let's look at this report and the town's report without the capital cost, and let's look at the differences.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to focus on.
I don't disagree with RKJ's reluctance to not include capital because they didn't have the detailed engineering report. So, I mean, even if we just focus on the operating expenses, we all know that there'll be some capital costs. There's a question about how much that will be. But let's just focus on the operating expenses.
I agree. I don't know that there's much to be gained by dissecting capital other than, yeah, we all know there's something. Right. So I guess for purposes of my discussion here, I'm kind of done with operating expenses. They're pretty close at the low end. They're dramatically more in the RKG report at the high end. Estimating approach is similar. The last big difference, we talked about the incentive payment. The RKG is just saying we're not going to even count that incentive payment offer. There's nothing in writing, so we think it doesn't, it doesn't exist for the purposes of our report. Our being RKG in that sentence. Last big difference is the permit fees. So RKG is estimating their construction costs at 18 million. Our estimate was 55. Our estimate was $1,000 a foot, which is kind of from what we can tell from internet research is the typical cost of a laboratory building or a clean room sort of a building. And they are using a lower number. I think it's like 300 and something a square foot, which is more like typical commercial space construction. What they're building there is definitely not typical commercial space. It's complicated. It's at the top of a hill in a very exposed area. It's laboratories, it's wet laboratories. Anyway, but the impact to the town is that if it costs 55 million, our permit fee revenues would be 660,000. If they claim that they're going to be coming in at more like 18 million, the permit fee revenue would be 220,000. So there's almost a $500,000 difference in permit fee revenue between the two. And then if you net all of that together, which is the rule called net expense, including capital. So that is operating expenses minus any incentive payment, minus the permit fees. That's your net expense. You can see the difference. At the low end, it's almost, they are higher than us by almost $7 million. And at the upper end, I have all your pictures sitting over it, but it's significantly more than that. And
Okay, just looking at, Bob, if I'm reading your chart right, looking at just operating expenses, Nahant's low is 14,400,000 over 40 years, and a high of 18,500,000 over 40 years. And RKG is estimating between 14,800,000 and 26,600,000 over 40 years.
correct.
Big difference.
Yeah.
And they didn't include this, so you could exclude in terms of the incentive payment, the 6 million from RKGs. We should probably do that. That would bring the 14.8 million down by 6 million, and the RKG 26.6 million down by another 6 million. So it's still pretty significant cost to the town, regardless of how you look at that.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Bob, this was in the chat, and that's my question as well. We don't know that they're using, they're building lab space. They very possibly could be out building straight up office building.
That's what RKG assumed, right? That's the dollars they assumed. So regardless of which assessment you believe, if you take the lowest possible number, it's a question of how many millions of dollars do the Nahanters want to subsidize for Northeastern University, even if you take the very lowest number.
Yeah, I mean, if you, I guess the one way to look at this is the town is being asked, forced to make a donation of somewhere between 7.7 million and $26 million to Northeastern University over 40 years.
So that's not just to speak plainly. That is not an optional payment. That is taxpayers being forced to pay for this, right? So
this would be recovered through real estate taxes, presumably.
Right. So property owners in the Nahant would have to make up that difference. So let's not mince words here. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Good point, Josh. Mm-hmm.
Questions, comments? Tony's been a little bit silent here, but rest of the FinCom?
Numbers don't lie. After reading them, I came up with a real evil idea. If they don't stop, we just put a big, huge wind fan right in front of where their window is going to be. And that's what they can look at.
I had someone suggest to me that we install mirrors up at Lodge Park so that we
Absolutely, solar panels.
No,
reflecting.
mirrors so that we can shine the sunlight in through their windows.
Yeah. You know, Bob, I want to put a caveat on this because I know I've heard through the rumor mill that, you know, who is RKG and what are their credentials, but I encourage anybody in the town to go onto their website, look at their professional credentials, look at the types of work that this company does. We originally reached out to KP Law, Town Council, and KP Law, I think rightfully said, we probably shouldn't be the firm that does this. You need an independent firm. And we think we can find you one. And we signed on to RKG. And if you look at their website and if you look at their credentials, these people are professionals. They do this all the time. And I have to trust their numbers.
Well, I think what we've learned that the numbers aren't as far off. I mean, they're, is where we started. So I mean, what it has done is confirmed where we started. And that's what we wanted to do, right? We wanted to make certain that it wasn't just something that the FinCom came up with, that we have some confirmation. And we do indeed find out that financially, it's not a good thing for Nahant.
Yeah, Judy, in hindsight, I'm glad that the finance committee, took a position on this and said, we need some independent numbers. Because I agree with you. I think it reaffirms our position.
Bob, did you happen to take these numbers and divide them by the number of people to figure out what the actual dollar hit would be to property taxes on the average household?
I believe that's the selectmen did that in their whatever the second one, whatever they're calling that. But I don't remember what the number is.
I believe it's in the RKG report, somewhere in the realm of 2,000
a year.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, I don't think that that's a one-time fee. So, but Bob's right. Effectively, what the residents in Nahant will do will be subsidize Northeastern.
Right.
Just to, reiterate what Mark said, it's, I'm requested this, and although it's, turned out to be an expensive study, when we're talking about millions and millions of dollars, it's a small price to pay to get a professional assessment of what the real impacts could be or would be to the town, to the town's residents. So,
But it's a study we had to do.
yeah.
Hey, Josh, this is Dana. Yeah, I'd agree with that. And it's good to get some outside experts to give us some information on it. I would, however, reserve my own. I'd like to look at this a little further, the per capita cost, and the 40-year time frame. It's an 8-page report. Not. I don't know if it's as thorough as it should be, but that's my own take on it at this point.
Dana, let me just add that the reason the 40 years is there is because Northeastern proposed giving their incentive $6 million payment, not in a one-time period, but over a 40-year period. So we based our analysis similarly.
It was over 40 years?
Mm-hmm.
Forgotten that. Oh.
I heard it was 20 years. Is it possible that it was 20 years, the 6 million for 20?
No, it was 40.
40 years.
I thought it was 40.
It is 40.
Wow. I guess I didn't remember that either. And
And that's not adjusted for inflation. So,
right.
Nor did we try to present value. So
$115,000 in the year 2060 is
right.
a lot
Yeah.
less.
Yeah, if you do a present value on it, it works out to substantially less than 6 million.
I mean, in the end, the answer is it's going to be wildly expensive for Nahant, but we're not going to be given the yes or no choice, are we?
Everything in the RKG report points to 40 years.
Yeah.
Judy, what was your comment?
My question, I mean, my point is that in the end, even at this rate, you could see it's going to be wildly expensive to the residents of Nahant, but we're not going to be given a choice, are we?
We made this town meeting.
No, no. Well, the choice in the town meeting is whether to continue to move forward with trying to stop this. But
Right.
I mean, it's hard to believe that in the end, we'll be given a choice.
Well, if the town affirmatively votes to take it by eminent domain, we will stop it.
Yes.
That's if the courts find that's.
No. If the town meeting votes to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take this by eminent domain, it will stop it.
And wouldn't Northeastern?
What makes you think so?
Take us to court?
The court,
That's the way the law works.
They can challenge the pro tanto or the amount we've estimated the cost of it, but they can't contest the taking itself. No.
Right. That's
Can they
right.
build it in another location up there, Mark?
No. Well, I mean, the Board of Selectmen is willing to negotiate. We've always been willing to negotiate with Northeastern to try to come to some sort of compromise where they can build what they're looking for without, not in an area where we feel needs to be protected. So we're willing to continue those negotiations, but I don't think Northeastern is at this point.
Okay.
Mark, when was the last conversation we've had with Northeastern on this?
Oh, God, last April, maybe, when they refused to talk to me anymore.
Anybody else on the Board of Selectmen, have they talked to Northeastern about negotiations?
No. We've been generally delegating because we can't, two selectmen constitutes a quorum. So we've generally been delegating the chairman as that spokesman along with Tony and town council.
Thank you.
I'm in communication with Northeastern when it comes to other things related to their property, but as far as like negotiation goes, that hasn't occurred in quite some time.
They
So
haven't moved from
just
their last
so
press
everybody
release.
knows, on January 28th, we're going to have a information session along with a question and answer session on the subject of eminent domain. So please tune into that. More details will be coming, but it'll be hosted by our eminent domain attorney who has made a career out of eminent domain and probably the preeminent eminent domain lawyer in Massachusetts, if not one of the leaders in the country. So that's coming up in a couple weeks. Should be very informative. So prepare all your questions about eminent domain for that session in 2 weeks.
That'll be hosted through Zoom. It'll also be broadcasted through the cable TV station live. Of course, you can't ask questions from your couch through the TV, but through Zoom you will be able to.
What's the date and time on that?
The 27th, Thursday, the 27th, and I think we are
That's the
trying to
28th.
Thursday, the 28th.
Yep. At what
And-
time?
And we're trying to start at 6:30.
And where can folks find the link to it? Is it in the community calendar?
It'll get posted just in the community calendar. And it'll be on the website.
Hey, as a prelude to the presentation or the discussion, would it be worth it to have RKG give a summary of this report prior to that?
I think that I think what's key is kind of segmenting the conversation out. The idea of this one on the 28th is more of procedure and process. How does eminent domain work? What are your options? You know, that sort of stuff, that 101 on eminent domain, not so much a debate about, you know, the value, you know, the appraisal number or this report, or whether we, you know, should or shouldn't pursue. It's more of a eminent domain 101. And I think, you know, it's a complicated conversation. It's a lengthy conversation. I think it's important to keep it kind of segmented. But it's up to the Board of Selectmen, Gene.
Well, what if you had, rather than RKG, what if this was perfect tonight, what Bob did? If he were to run through that, well, we have everybody on there.
Yeah, Gene, I'd be happy to do it. I tend to agree with Tony, as let's not confuse the topics. And if we wanted to do a separate session on just the financial aspects of it, we could do that.
All right.
Is that?
It sounds good, Bob. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to, you know, for us laymen to learn about eminent domain. I think that's a full evening's agenda. I know there's a lot of questions people are going to want to ask. I think that's going to be a pretty full evening and very informative.
But I think that, but here's the thing about that, and I understand wanting to keep those two separate, but I think that people won't understand there's not enough context. Why would we go to the trouble and expense of eminent domain without the context of what not going to eminent domain is going to cost each Nahant resident? So maybe there's some sort of context setting before you talk about what eminent domain means.
Yeah, without going into the detail, and tell people there will be a second session on thus and such a day.
Yeah. Judy, that's a good point, I think.
Yeah, that is a good point. It's the why it matters.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So maybe a brief intro on the finances, followed by our longer session on the eminent domain.
Right, and without taking questions or discussion on the finances, because that'll be another meeting, but just to set the stage of why you're even considering eminent domain, because that's not without cost.
That does make sense to me.
Yeah, maybe we can do a prelude to that before Tony, but we'll talk about the agenda and how we set that up. But I think Judy brings up a very good point.
All right, more questions, discussions?
Might open the chat room, Bob.
Yeah.
But Bob, thank you for going through this again, or go with us, because every time you say that, it means it's a little clearer to me. It started out pretty muddy, so thank you for this.
Yeah, this is very clear. Just what we needed. Thank you.
I'm trying to figure out how to open the chat.
I think if you just read the questions in the chat room.
Yeah, no, well, first I have to figure out how to get to the chat room. I think I have to stop sharing.
I can do that. I can do that for you if you like.
All right, well, go ahead. Why don't you read them and then we can tag team our way through this.
Okay. Tony, you have them?
Yeah, so Bob, are you on like a PowerPoint?
This is a PowerPoint.
So hit escape, or at the top of your screen, there should be a stop sharing.
Yep.
My screen.
Okay, so I do have to stop sharing. All right.
And then the chat button is down the bottom, and it'll pull up on your screen on the right-hand side. And then, you know, typically, I think what would be good is maybe if you call the name of the person who, you know, typed in the chat, and then they can unmute themselves, announce their name and address, and address the committee.
Okay. Can I make chat bigger than it is? Probably not. Blah, blah, blah.
You can drag it, right above the word chat. If you scroll your mouse, you'll get a two-sided arrow. You can click on that and drag it up.
There we go. That's better. Okay. All right.
I've become somewhat of an expert.
Really?
Yeah, I don't use.
It could be life after being a town administrator. Tony.
Yeah, I will teach Zoom 101 class.
You can be a Zoom consultant, a Zoomie. All right, so the first one from Ken Carangelo to everyone, they are not the same. RKG's numbers are significantly lower than the BOS. I'm not sure what to make of that.
I think I found over the, doing this with Board of Selectmen meetings, I think it's best to call on the person that typed in the chat room to unmute themselves and let them make their comment themselves and go from there.
Okay. Yep, I see Ken's smiling face, so he's still with us.
I think you have to unmute him, Bob.
But you're on mute. If you're like me, you're at your most eloquent when you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Great, thanks. Yeah, it's you lose the time sequence with the chat. That's like the comments from long ago.
Right.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, my biggest question here is what, Bob, in your analysis, what are you comparing with the RKG report? Because in looking at what went out in the second statement versus what's in RKG, the comparison looks very different from what you had just put up in the PowerPoint.
I am using the estimate that FinCom, or I did it in consultation with the FinCom and with some heavy input from FinCom and department heads and so forth. And it should tie to the second statement.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been looking at it in the hour or so before this meeting started, just out of raging curiosity. And I mean, I can look at it more closely, but it would appear that they actually don't.
I think just, you will find that they do.
Okay, well, I mean, just for example, the per capita cost, and RKG actually cites this or calls this out specifically, their per capita cost, taking out the things that they took out for education, et cetera, was $1,931 per person. The second statement's estimate was $2,835. So the RKG is 32% lower than what the selectmen's statement said.
I think that was capital, Bob.
No, it's the operating cost.
Operating.
Yeah, they also, the infrastructure improvements required by the NU project, their RKG doesn't say they don't have the capability. They say that these improvements would also benefit other residents and visitors to Nahant. There was no indication provided that the additional estimated 175 vehicle trips or wastewater generated would result in failure of these infrastructure components, which indicates they didn't count it because it happens with or without Northeastern. There was the property tax shift that was part of the second statement's discussion and part of the cost.
No, it is not part of the cost.
Again, I'm not sure we're comparing.
And in fact, it is not a cost at all.
It's not, but it's mentioned in this booklet that went out to everyone in town. And according to RKG, it is negligible. This book says it's 5 to 8 million, and RKG says it's negligible.
Ken, read the second statement. It is not a cost. It is simply a shifting of property tax burden.
Yes.
At least the finance committee was very careful to say, we are not in the business of trying to estimate real estate tax impacts. However, if it were to occur, this would be the net effect. So we are not estimating it. It is not a cost. It's just,
however, that's not
there to make the taxpayers aware that that's what would happen.
Okay, and RKG's contention is that it would not happen. They literally saying it would be negligible. So again, is it in the total? Maybe not, but that's not how it was represented.
Pick whatever real estate forecasting crystal ball you want.
I'm taking the one from the $12,500 consultant that you all just hired. So
Ken, it's Mark again. Let's just assume, let's just take RKG's report on its own.
Okay, so let's do this. So,
let's put aside.
Bob, can I just want to ask you a question? This is the very first slide Bob
Let
put
me
up.
finish. Let me finish.
Go ahead.
Let's put aside the Board of Selectmen's. I mean, there's no doubt that there's a cost to the board, there's a cost to the taxpayer of the town, whatever report you accept.
There is a cost, yes. There are other options and negotiations, as you've mentioned. However, I guess as a taxpayer and citizen, a booklet from the Board of Selectmen making statements that are now being countered by this independent third party is, not insignificant. And Bob, the graph that you put up first showing their RKG's estimates, I believe it showed 14 to 41 million. I don't see 41 million anywhere in this report. And that graph is fairly stark. So if you want to check it again, again, that's why I want to be cautious here, and I understand I'm sounding moderately agitated here, but in comparing, sort of item by item, what was presented to the public versus what's in RKG, I honestly, and Bob, I'm happy to do this offline in more detail if that would help.
Yeah.
But I don't think it ties to what you're presenting here.
Okay, so you want to set up a call, Ken, and we can go
If you
through it?
look at page 2, the paragraph says that they conclude that the facility will result in total additional costs to the town of between 16.9 million and 21.7 million over a 40-year period. So they're very explicit about that.
They are, but that's not what Bob's graph says.
Yeah, and I took my numbers from, I think they call it table 3.
So I agree, Barbara, that's right. I mean, they make some it would have been nice if they had sort of done this side by side, but they are fairly clear about where the things differ.
Bob, what number are you trying to come up with?
I'm trying to come up with an apples to apples number. Since they didn't touch the capital stuff, we really can't come up with a total net cost. So really what we're trying to do is just compare the line items that we can compare.
Well, what number is Mr. Colangelo trying to come up with?
I'm trying to compare the apples to apples, which is the second statement's total additional costs was 22.4 to 28.9 million. And what RKG is saying is 14.8 to 26.7 million. So that's somewhere between 2 and 14 million less than what the second statement says.
Much different than the $6 million they're offering us over 40 years.
Mark, that may or may not be true, and if no one's talked to them since last April, then that's a separate question. I guess what I'm trying to ascertain here and just understand is, what's the actual result that we're looking at, and what was presented.
The difference is
what are we hearing now?
The difference is between RKG is saying 14 to what, 26?
26.7.
Yeah, and the Board of Selectmen is saying between 17 and
22 to 28.9.
Yeah,
according to the second statement.
I mean, in my opinion, it's like that is so separated from the $6 million that they're offering us. It's doesn't matter.
Well, divided by 40 years, Mark, it does matter.
Well, what degree? Can you tell me?
So if you get to
what degree?
If you get 220,000 a year from Northeastern, then you're done. Then you're even. 6 million up front or regardless. That there's been no pilot discussion, the scholarship was the last time there was any discussion about payments to the town. I mean, there's so many things here.
There
Again,
has been,
separate,
no, there
focusing
has
on the
been,
numbers specifically, which is,
there has been other discussions by members of the board prior to the previous board. But there has been discussions. The best offer Northeastern can come up with is $6 million over 40 years.
okay. And again, looking at RKG in the pilot here, 220,000 to 285,000 annually would cover some range of these costs. So if that's whether it's 6 million divided by that or that number annually or whatever, it's not forced upon individual taxpayers. You know, there's negotiation here. Anyway, I'm more concerned at this point. I'm more concerned at this point that something was sent to the town that was not fully approved by the finance committee, that was presented in just before a town meeting that didn't end up happening, but still was meant to sway voter opinion. And there are radically different numbers in this independent report. It's comparing this apple with this apple.
Yeah, the apples aren't that different, Ken.
Maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way, but I don't believe I am. And I said maybe it'd be more productive at this point to take it offline.
Yeah,
which I'm happy to do.
I agree, because I think that the apples are, they're very expensive apples either way you go. They're like golden apples. But thank you, thanks for taking that offline. So that'd be great.
It's not the most expensive consulting report the town's ever had, by the way. That's okay.
Yeah, that's actually true. Ken, seriously, do you want to set up a call?
Sure.
All right.
So I'm pretty sure I have your email. I'll send you.
Yeah. Okay. rvanderslice comcast.net. Okay. All right. So let's see. That was Ken. B. Rogers. Does it have wet labs or is it offices and rooms? So is B still here?
Yeah. I guess we haven't seen I guess the two, I'll just short circuit everything. The question, one question I had was, do we know that it has wet labs? At one point, they were talking about office buildings and, conference rooms and things like that. And I think that's obviously a wet lab building is going to cost more. And we haven't seen their final plan. So that was just a plain question. And the other question that I put in, I might as well get them both out of the way, is it was my understanding that when a municipality goes to court seeking to take property by eminent domain, that the court rules on whether eminent domain is justified and then adjudicates a value. But you, Mark, was it you that said, no, once the town votes to seek eminent domain, the only remaining question is the value? That's not what I had understood, I guess.
Yeah, well, tune in on the 27th and we can answer those questions.
Yeah, so let's separate the questions, Mark. The wet labs piece, I believe in the FEIR, they show pipelines running from the pumping facility up to the new building, which would indicate there is some sort of wet lab capability. That's what I know.
At some point,
I based that conclusion on, and I'm going to throw it back to Mark for whatever your observations are and anything about the eminent domain.
Why don't you throw it back to Northeastern about whether they're putting labs in?
I think they're putting labs in. Go ahead, Josh.
But the eminent
I guess
domain
I was just going to
question,
say the only factor from a FinCom perspective or a financial impact to the town perspective is how much the construction costs would be of the building, and therefore how much of a building permit fee we would collect. That's the implication of whether or not there is wet labs in that particular building from a financial impact to the town perspective.
Right, and the reason we assumed there were wet labs was because the FEIR had pipelines bringing seawater over there.
Okay. And the eminent domain, I'll wait for that answer.
Yeah, you can wait for the experts to chime in on that, Beatrice. But my understanding of eminent domain is that once the town meeting authorizes the Board of Selectmen to take, and if the Board of Selectmen does take, then and we pay the pro toto amount, then we own it. Northeastern can then at some point within 3 years question whether the taking was in good faith, or question whether or not the amount in the pro toto that we offered was adequate.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the other thing that'll be discussed on the 28th is there's the two different eminent domain laws or chapters in the general law of chapter 79 verse 80A, which is a little bit, I think what you were just describing was chapter 79. Chapter 80A is a little bit different, allows you to come up with a dollar amount and a decision to continue pursuing eminent domain. They're slightly different. 79 is the more, what Chairman Cullinan was just describing, is the more utilized version of eminent domain. So those things are, that's the part of, or the value of the meeting on the 28th, is understanding those two different options or understanding how it works. And they'll be able to answer all those types of questions.
But be just in the meantime, we have talked to the attorneys about exactly your question, can it be challenged? And it's probably best to wait for the 28th, but
yep.
It is a question that we've raised.
Okay, I can wait 2 weeks. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, let's see. Next is Susan Solomon. It says NU has stated that there would be laboratories in the FEIR process. Susan, are you still on? No?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
there you
am. I
go.
was just trying to answer the question. I was just trying to answer the question for B. All of the FEIR documents clearly state that they plan to have quite a few laboratories. If you go through them, you'll find out there's a lot of detail on that. They also talk about laboratory classrooms as well as research laboratories. It's all in the FEIR, their documents.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. That wasn't an invidious question. I just didn't know.
From Andrea Murphy to everyone, but there's no question there. Yeah, Andrea, are you with us? And is there a question or? Okay, so moving on, Alice Court, if RKG estimates that the operating expenses for an additional 114 people is an annual cost of $323 some odd thousand, does that mean that the current population is already costing the town the same amount? And yeah, I think they actually say that in their report.
I think Josh, you could probably comment on this.
Yes, is the answer. They are costing us right now.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I found interesting about the RKG report was that they pointed out what Susan Solomon and I presented before, is that the building that they're building is way too big according to academic standards for just 114 people. And so when RKG estimates per capita costs for, over 200 people, that's far more along the lines of the actual building that they are building according to many universities' academic standards. Who's laughing? Is that?
Sorry.
I don't know. But anyway, that I thought that gave extra legitimacy also to the report in my eye when you're moved towards the higher estimates that they're providing.
Yeah, that's true, Alice, but just to be clear, their low estimate took Northeastern at the word that the added population is 114.
You know, I
But
understand that. And in all of the FEIR reports, they keep on mentioning the current plan, the current plan, the current plan, you know,
Yep.
about what they're going to do. So the value is to look at both the low and the high number.
Exactly.
Wasn't their original filing was for
144.
47 or something like that? Because I remember we changed our estimates when they changed their population.
Well, their original notice to the Globe at the very beginning of all this was like 64, that they were only going to have 20 more faculty members and, you know, just a few more graduate students and so forth. And that was when they initially presented the plan to the town, what was it, December of 2018 or something. And then they gave a story to the Globe. But then the numbers went up significantly as we were pointing out that their building was way too big for those numbers. And their numbers are still way too big. But Susan did most of the calculations, so if she wants to weigh in again, I'll back off.
Hey, Alex, this is Dana Sheehan. I was wondering if I could follow up on your comment about if there are 114 persons there now, then it's costing the town now $323,000 per year for those people. I mean, if we do a hypothetical, Northeastern closes and decides to go to Gloucester or Lynn or wherever, would the town have 323,000 extra in their budget because those people left? I don't think so. So, I mean, there are fixed and variable costs here, and there's also economies of scale. So it's like this per capita
Well,
basis.
they're not paying that now,
is
Dana.
questionable for me.
They're not paying that now, Dana.
Well, but, all right, so.
And Dana, that's another reason
interesting
why you do an estimate over 40 years is to try to get away from some of that stepwise incremental cost stuff. But go ahead. I kind of jumped on your question.
Yeah, I guess, Bob, I guess it raises my consciousness about it. It's like if the 114 people left, Nahant would still be paying the same. There's not going to be a $323,000 less per year in expenditures by the town. So it's interesting to think of it that way.
In the RKG report, they give three estimates. They give a low of 114, which is the number of users now. They have a medium of 147 as the number reported in end-use reports, and a high of 205, which they say is the maximum that facility could handle. So you've got three ranges that you're working with there.
Right. Thanks, Gene. Okay.
Josh, what were you gonna say?
Just, acknowledging that Dana's asked an interesting question, and I've spent a lot of time this, how do you quantify this? And it's, I kind of equate it to like us or like me as a taxpayer. I've never had to have the fire department come to my house or the police department have to come to my house. I've never had to go in an ambulance, so I should be free, right? But that's not how a community works. And, it's kind of a price of admission thing. We're all in this together. And I think that's why some version of a per capita assessment, is the only sensible way you can really address this thing. But I do, it's an interesting question, Dana, but just my own personal ponderings, that's how I look at it.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, let's see. Moving down the list, B, we've already talked about B's second question. Andrea Murphy, I'm just going to read it. 40 years and $6 million dollars. He says people, I think she means dollars, exclamation point. That was the last offer that may have been withdrawn. Really? Do we really want to give up East Point for this? It's not a question, so I'm just going to ask Andrea if there's any follow-up to that.
I don't think she's there anymore.
Okay. All right, Susan Solomon, if you're 21. I think we've talked about that already. Dana wants to be in the call with Ken. Fine. When we set it up, I'll pass the meeting invite over. Susan Solomon, FEI documents by Northeastern clearly state there will be laboratories again, and that is the end of the questions in chat. Is there any further questions, comments, discussion, particularly from the public? No? Finance Committee, is there any other business or things we should have discussed but did not? Selectmen?
I don't have anything else.
All set.
All right,
Nothing
so
here.
I think a motion to adjourn may be in order.
So moved.
Second? Barbara seconds. Roll call vote.
Katie, aye.
Well, Vanderslice, aye, just to fill the silence.
Dana, aye.
Brown eye, wherever it is. DeWitt Brown eye, I got it, okay.
Charmy, aye.
Zohar,
Oh,
aye.
yeah, I'm one. Louis, aye.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
Why don't, I won't, we have a Board of Select meeting the next time you guys meet, so I won't be here. Allison will join you guys.
Oh, good.
I think Debbie's gonna join you. That'll be her last meeting with you guys, but if there's anything you need from us or me before that, will you just let me know?
Okay. And thank you.
Yeah. Could I have a motion from the board to adjourn?
Yep, I move that the Board of Selectmen adjourn.
Second,
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Come on, aye. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Good night, thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Good night. And Bob, are you still there?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
You'll send me that
Yeah.
comparison document. Thank you.
I certainly will.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
You too.